Say hello to everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Little technical difficulties here to get started. My name is Jerry Lisman, and we're going to talk about pricing today. Pricing is probably one of the biggest challenges we face in the marketplace, and we're going to see how you get your product to market affects your pricing and what you need to do in order to be a profitable company. As you can see from the listing of the product or companies at the bottom of this slide, we're in a lot of different markets. So we have challenges every day with how we get our products to market and also the pricing that we need to achieve profitability in each of those segments. Pricing, is it an art or is it a science? It's a little bit of both. There's a lot of science, there's a lot of calculations, there's a lot of putting math to the paper and pencil, but there's also a amount of art to it that you need to work with understanding your marketplace and how things are achieved in that marketplace. We're still working on some technical difficulties here, so I apologize for being a little scattered here. One of the things that you need to do is understand your markets and how you get your products to market. As soon as we can change slides here.
There it is. Needs to go back in the presentation.
Okay, now we should be good. What we're going to do is do a little bit of math calculations here so you understand how we arrive at profit margins, and then understand how that affects your distribution channels. We're going to take a sample of selling a Play-Doh product. If the manufacturer's suggested retail price is $19.95 and your cost is $8.87, your profit at the end of the day for selling one of those products is $11.08. But also the percentage of profit or your gross profit margin is important. That's the way most companies evaluate their success, because not all products are priced at the same price, and not all products have the same cost. So in order to determine your gross profit margin on this Play-Doh product, you take the profit that you made, the $11.08, divided by your selling price of $19.95, multiply it by 100, and you come out with 55.53% gross profit margin. For a retailer, that's a very nice margin, and it's something most retailers would strive for and be very happy with at the end of the day. But it's not always as simple as having one product sold to one person and making a profit at the end of the day. You have to understand your cost of goods, because your cost of goods determines your profitability. We're going to talk about two different types of cost of goods. One is non-manufactured products. If you're a retailer or you're buying from other distributors, you are not doing anything other than buying the product, bringing it into your warehouse or your store, and paying any duties and taxes on it. So that is your cost of goods. When you're a manufacturer, you have to take in your cost of your raw materials, the packaging of the product when it's finished, your labor cost, your machine cost, and any inbound freight on all those raw materials and packaging. One thing to keep in mind on this, I mentioned machine costs. That's not the cost of the machine to run and make the product. It's the cost of running the machine just for producing the product. It doesn't include the cost of acquiring the machine or any equipment that goes with it. That is strictly, if your machine costs $100 an hour to run and you run 100 products in an hour, your cost for that machine cost would be $1 per product. Simple way to analyze cost of goods, it's the total amount of money you expend to get the product on your shelf and ready for sale. This is so, I have to apologize. I'm so used to working with a live crowd. I can, see some questions popping up in your heads. So please use the portal to ask any questions, and we'll try and get to those before we end at 10:30 today. What don't you include in the cost of goods? You don't include the cost of your patents or legal fees for developing the product. You don't include your production equipment for the product, but you do include the time for running that product and your selling, general, and administrative expenses, which is your SG&A. SG&A is defined as expenses that are typically the costs associated with the company's overall overhead, since they cannot be directly traced to a single product or a service. SG&A includes nearly everything that is not included in your cost of goods. And finally, whenever you're in business, always consult with your accounting professional for advice on how to handle the patent, legal, and equipment expenses for your product. A lot of times they can be expensed as a business expense. Sometimes they're amortized over a period of time, and sometimes they're depreciated. So your accounting professional can help you determine how to treat those costs. But generally speaking, they are not factored into your cost of goods. Distribution strategies. In the food chain of any product, there's a manufacturer, a wholesaler, a distributor, a retailer, and a customer. Manufacturer is obviously the company that actually makes the product. The wholesaler and the distributor are people who distribute the product for that manufacturer through a series of distribution outlets. And the retailer is the customer their customer who finally does sell it to the end user. Sometimes the customer is a business. If you're selling copiers, chances are you're selling to another business. So the terms B2C and B2B, and there's a new term called D2C, are getting blurred as time goes on, because everybody's blurring the lines between what's a wholesaler, a distributor, a manufacturer, and a retailer. In the first example here, the manufacturer is selling direct to the customer. This would be would be previously a B2C relationship. Now it's a D2C, a direct to consumer relationship. It's the most simple and direct way of getting your product as a manufacturer to your customer. The second step is the manufacturer sells to a retail store, such as Best Buy, Walmart, Target, any of those stores. So again, it's pretty simple. You take the product from your warehouse or your manufacturing facility, send it to their stores, they sell it to the customer, and the profit margins are relatively simple to define. The third possibility is manufacturer to distributor, who sells to a store, who then sells to the consumer. That's, we're at it now 2 steps between you as the manufacturer and the end user as the customer. And the final scenario is manufacturer to wholesaler to distributor to retailer to the end user. It's important for you to understand all these steps when you price your product and how you are going to market. Because if you start out as a manufacturer selling direct to the customer, the profit profile can be one thing. But when you add steps into the process, it adds costs and lower lower revenue, because everybody wants to make money in the process. Using the example of the Play-Doh, the manufacturer cost was $8 and he sells it for $19 to the customer. He's making $11, everybody's happy. But if you sell to a retail store, they want to make some money. And generally they want to make 40 to 50%. So it changes the whole economics of the distribution cycle and your profit profile. And a lot of times companies start out as a manufacturer direct to consumer. And as time goes on, for whatever reason, those relationships change. Apple Computers, a prime example. They started out years ago selling only direct from their website and through their own stores. Then because consumer demand required or demanded that they make the product more available in areas where Apple didn't have stores. So now they've added a retailer in that food chain. So consequently, they had to discount their product to the store in order to achieve that distribution channel. Warby Parker, the glass manufacturer, they're in the same boat to some degree today. They're a manufacturer. They were selling direct to the consumer. You buy it online. They send you the glasses to your house. Today, they have their own stores. So even though it's still the same company, their profit profile has changed because they have the expense of a store, the rent, and all the overhead that goes with a retail operation. Using this scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the different channels affects that original slide we showed where we sold it for $19.95. We achieved an $11 profit, and how that affects going forward this operation. In a direct-to-consumer, which was the first scenario we showed you, it remains the same. $19.95, $8.87 cost, so your gross profit margin is 55%. But if you add a retailer in the picture, the retailer generally wants to make, like I said, a 40 to 50% profit margin, which amounts to about a 40 to 50% discount in general terms. So instead of selling it for $19.95, you're selling it for $9.97 to the retail store. They're going to in turn sell it at $19.95 and basically double their money. The product cost remains the same, but the gross profit dollars drops to $1.10 because you've given away $9.98 as a discount to that retailer, and your gross profit margin is now 11.2% or 0.02%. In the third scenario, where you're selling to a distributor, and a lot of times when you're a single product company, if you want to get into some of the big chains, the Walmarts, the Sam's Clubs, the Targets, they don't want to buy one product from one company. They want to buy from somebody that can supply them with multiple products throughout the year. So if they like your product, they will force you to work with one of their distributors. So the retailer, whether it's Walmart, Sam's, whoever, wants to make that same 50%, get that same 50% discount as we sell to the retailers, but the distributor has to make money. Generally, they're making 15%. So that comes off the selling price that we're achieving as the company. Our product costs remain the same. And we went from making, in the first scenario, direct to consumer, $11 to losing 39 cents, or a gross profit margin of a negative $4.60, because our selling price after all the discounts dropped to $8.47, or approximately 40 cents below our cost. And in the last scenario, it gets even worse because you've added another layer of distribution. The wholesaler generally wants to be working on a 20% discount because they're a bigger organization. They're selling throughout the country. They probably have multiple warehouses, so they need to make a little bit more. So in this scenario, at the end of the day, we end up with a gross profit of a negative $2.09, or 30.808% negative gross profit margin, because our net selling price after all the discounts to the various entities, it turns out to be $6.78. So as you can see, using the science of pricing shows how each scenario affects your business. The challenge you have is if you were to go to market with your product at $19.95, and then later you find out that a Target, Walmart wants to buy your product, you don't have the margin left in the scenario that made you 55% in the initial scenario. You don't have the margin to make that work with a wholesaler. Several years ago, a company ran into this exact situation. They hired our company to fix it. It took us 4 years because we had to get their cost of goods down, but also raise their selling price over a period of time. Because in the marketplace today, with very few exceptions, manufacturers, retailers, distributors do not have pricing power. The market determines what price you can sell at. So most companies today aren't making money on their selling price, but how they manufacture or buy their product. So purchasing, getting your cost of goods in line is probably as important as the retail price, because the retail price, unless you are Apple and a few other unique products in the marketplace, you have no pricing power whatsoever. So keep that in mind, that if you're just selling the same widget that everybody else is selling, the market's going to determine what price you sell it at. And you just need to look at all the costs that you absorb into your distribution to determine if you're going to be profitable or not. The challenge, again, becomes, are you selling the same widget, or are you selling something that has additional value? And that's where you can have some pricing power if you're selling the same widget but has more bells and whistles on it. So sometimes product innovation, even slightly, can mean the difference between making money or just being a commodity product in the marketplace. So how do we solve the problem that we just laid out, where you went from making 55% gross profit margin to losing money, depending on the scenarios that for your distribution? And well, let me just back up 1 second. When you start your business, we always suggest you factor in the worst case scenario for distribution. If you factor that in initially, you'll make a lot of money if you stay direct to consumer. But if you do need to go into various distribution channels, you have the money and the profit margins and the profit dollars available to make that happen. And that's what we call our factor of 5. Basically, it's you take the cost of goods to get that product on your shelf, you multiply it by 5, and that becomes your suggested manufacturer retail price. So using that factor of 5, obviously the $19.95 is no longer your sell price, but the sell price becomes $44.35. Your cost still stays the same at $8.87, and you make $35.48, or a gross profit margin of 80%. Our suggestion is all manufacturers should strive for a 70% gross profit margin at suggested retail, MSRP. In the second scenario, where we're only making a little over $1, we have plenty of room for margin and discounts. And at the end of the day, your profit is $13.30 with a gross profit margin of over almost 60%. And your discounted selling price is $22.17. So that's the revenue you would achieve. The one thing to keep in mind is, as you start down these different distribution channels, your revenue is going to decrease. If you're direct to consumer today at retail and you go into a retail store to sell them product, you're going to sell, assuming you sold the exact same amount as you did before, your revenue will be roughly cut in half. But the goal of getting into retail stores would be to grow your market share and grow your business, and at the end of the day, grow overall unit sales, which would increase your revenue. In the third scenario, direct to distributors, costs are still percentage of sales. But at the end of the day, our gross profit margin, where it was the loss in the first scenario at 1995, we're now making just under $10 or a little over a 50% margin. And in the final, where you're including a wholesaler and a distributor, you're at $6.21 gross profit dollars, or a gross margin of 41%. As you can see, that starting out at an 80% margin, by the time you get through the various steps, you're going to be at a margin of 40%, or roughly half of what it starts out to be. But at 40%, even if your operating costs, your SG&A of the factories, the warehouses, the distribution costs that you're absorbing on your SG&A side, you're still going to be a very profitable company, probably dropping somewhere between 15 to 20% to the bottom line. So as you can see, it's science. It's a lot of calculations. It brings math into the equation, but it also is art, for the simple reason that maybe $44.35 isn't the price that people will pay for that Play-Doh set. So that's where the art comes in, is knowing what your competitors are selling. Are you giving them something extra that might be a competitive advantage, so people will pay that difference? We do this in one of our businesses where we take two standard commodity products, put them together into a value pack, but the value pack actually is achieving a better sell price for the two combined items than if you were to buy those individually. And sounds crazy, but we sell on Amazon, and people will buy, for the sake of ease, they will buy a product that may cost 10 or 15% more than if they were to buy them individually, for the convenience of hitting one button and getting the two products that they're looking for. So at the end of the day, knowing how you're going to take your product to market is so important, because as you can see, what looked good on paper in a direct-to-consumer scenario changes dramatically if you're forced to or need to use retail stores, distributors, or wholesalers. Everybody needs to make money, and they're the wholesalers and the distributors are just like you, in business to make money. So they will demand certain discounts in order to promote your product, warehouse your product, and distribute your product for you. But at the end of the day, they have the entree into some places that you may never be able to get into. And sometimes it just doesn't work, to be honest. Sometimes the pricing structure that you're forced into by competition or whatever, and you don't have that extra bells and whistles to make it happen that differentiates you from everyone else, will force you to say we can sell through distributors, but we can't sell through wholesalers. But you need to understand all the costs with the various distribution channels before you start pricing your products. Once you price a product at $19.95 in the market, it would be next to impossible to get it up to $44 in any reasonable length of time. Pricing in today's market, in today's environment, there are no secrets. You put a price out there today, it's going to hang around somewhere for a long, long time. And that is a very quick overview of let's talk pricing and the importance of understanding your cost, which is probably the single biggest challenge we encounter with companies that we mentor or advise or look to acquire. They don't totally understand what their true cost of goods are. And consequently, if you don't know that, you can't intelligently price your product for the various distribution channels that are available to you and in the marketplace. And I think there might be some questions. I'm not sure how we get those. Okay. Before we get into some questions, we're going to do a Zoom question and answer session on Saturday at 1 o'clock. So if anyone's interested, if we don't get to your question today, or you just want to learn more, pricing and cost of goods is more than a 35-minute presentation. There's a lot of factors. And I know there's one question that was asked earlier today about the service industry and pricing. That could probably be another 35-minute or longer presentation. But Saturday, 1 o'clock on Zoom, just send a email to zoom@lismanholdings.com, and we'll send you the link for and we'll stay on that call as long as needed to answer all your questions.
Stuff, sure.
Okay. Okay. The first question was about service. The one thing about service we'll go into a little bit is that service is generally time, and you need to understand if you're doing a service for a customer, how long is that going to take? You know, if you're a plumber, you need to know how long it takes to change a hot water heater. If you're a website designer, you need to know how long it's going to take you to do the website, and then you can factor in the time for meetings and things like that. The one thing the question asked was, do you do fixed rate or do you do it hourly? When we were in the service business doing websites, we would do an hourly rate up to a maximum price. So the customer knew that it would not exceed a certain price, but if we got it done quicker, they benefited from the lower price. The challenge you have there is what your competition is doing and being able to compete with them effectively. Giving them a lower price per hour but a higher maximum cost may not be beneficial in that bidding process. I have another question. As a sophomore in high school, I took a marketing class, and one of the main topics we talked about was ethics and pricing. How do you balance ethics and beating competition with penetration pricing when entering a new market? That's a good question. I mean, the ethical pricing that's a debate, and could be debated for a long time. A good example of ethical pricing has been the PPE products through the pandemic. Pricing of cost of goods during the pandemic on most PPE products went up by a factor of 4 or 5 times. Masks that we bought for 15 cents in December were costing us 60 and 75 cents in March. Part of it was we were bringing them in by air shipments versus a sea shipment. The airlines were charging exorbitant rates because they had customers standing in line for space on the airplanes. And at the end of the day, it boiled down to that in the process of distributors and wholesalers, everybody was jacking the price up. So we made no more money at the end of the day on a mask that we sold in December than what we sold in March. In fact, in some cases, we probably made less money, even though the price was probably 3 to 4 times what we charged somebody in December. So I'm not sure what ethical pricing really means. You know, you want to be fair, you want to be comparable in the marketplace, but it's what the market will bear. And a lot of companies will require a dealer, retailer, wholesaler to sign an agreement called MAP, which is manufacturer advertised pricing, where you can sell at that price or maybe 10% below that price, but not below any further than that. That gives them pricing stability, at least on the downside, so somebody doesn't come in and works out of their garage and sells it for 10% above cost just to make some money. So I hope that answered your question. If you would like to explain, to go deeper in that, where we can actually have a conversation on it. Join us on Saturday for our question and answer session. Let's see, we got this one. Does the factor of 5 theory work for products that the seller is distributing or shipping themselves? If you start out as selling direct to the consumer, you really don't need a factor of 5. But if down the road you are either because of logistical issues or customer demand that you need to go to another distribution model, you won't have that margin in there. So we always suggest you start out with the factor of 5. And in some cases, we've even done a factor of 6 just to make sure you have the margin there. And then if you need to discount, rather than lowering the price, we suggest you take, if it's a $10 item and it costs you $2, and you think that you can sell more at $8, do a special. You still maintain that $10 price in the marketplace. So if you do need to go into distribution down the road, you still have the margin available, but you're selling it at $7, $8, $9, whatever the market will bear. And that will help tell you where you need to be. And maybe it becomes down the road a question of lowering the price, but also lowering your costs, which may end up still being a factor of 5. If a company realizes they have undervalued their product, how can they raise their pricing structure? Good question. Okay. Real good question. It's extremely difficult, especially if it's a product that's in a commodity that other people might be selling. The best way to do it is to make an enhancement to the product, add something to it, change what the product is that you're giving for the price you started at, and then add on some bells and whistles, throw in something. I just bought some flash drives. They put a lanyard in. It probably cost them 10 cents. It was $2 more than if I bought it without the lanyard. So I'm getting the hook at, because we're always on time here at TechBridge Nation. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you'll reach out at zoom@lismanholdings.com, and I'd love to really have conversations with you. This has been a really weird experience, but thank you for joining us today. I hope I've been helpful and I haven't totally confused you on pricing, but we'll answer those questions that you might still have on Saturday. And stay safe and stay healthy and have a nice holiday season. Thanks so much and have a good day.